But now let us move directly to our topic today. I would like to introduce again Madam Undersecretary for Arms Control and International Security, Rose Gottemoeller. Rose Gottemoeller has a veritable rich record, not only in the diplomatic service, but also a very strong academic background. She worked also as the chief negotiator, US negotiator of the new Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty with the Russian Federation, which entered into force in 2011. And also served as the director of the Carnegie Moscow Center. So I think we would be hard-pressed to find anyone who would be better positioned than hers to speak on this topic. So without further ado, I would like to pass the floor to Madam Undersecretary, please.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much, Petr, for that introduction. It is wonderful to be back in Prague. Again, it's wonderful to be back in the Czech Foreign Ministry, and so thank you for the honor of your invitation to this important conference. I wanted to join you in thanking your partners, as well as you, for hosting this conference. I think it comes at an extraordinarily important moment as we are beginning now the run to the Non-Proliferation Treaty Review Conference in April and May of 2015. So it comes at a very important moment. I think that the Czech Republic is notable for any number of points, but one thing is its leadership on arms control and non-proliferation issues. When President Obama delivered his now famous remarks here in April of 2009, it was really no coincidence that Prague was the venue. It was through the Velvet Revolution, now 25 years ago, that the Czech people proved the world could change. As President Obama said, the Czechs believed that walls could come down, that peace could prevail. That same spirit will be needed as we continue to face the dangers posed by weapons of mass destruction in this new century. It was here in Prague that President Obama laid out his vision of a world in which the peace and security of a world free of nuclear weapons is not just desirable, but an attainable dream. It's achievable as a long-term goal. He laid out this vision because the United States cannot and will not accept a world that remains forever under the shadow of nuclear war or nuclear terror. There should be no doubt the United States' commitment to achieving the peace and security of a world without nuclear weapons is unassailable. We continue to pursue nuclear disarmament, and we will keep faith with our Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty NPT commitments, prominent among them Article 6. Our responsible approach to disarmament has borne fruit in the form of major reductions in nuclear weapons, fissile material stocks, and infrastructure. These efforts have led us to reduce our nuclear arsenal by approximately 85% from its Cold War heights. In real numbers, that means that we have gone from 31,255 nuclear weapons in our active stockpile in 1967 to 4,804 warheads in 2013. I want to stress to this audience that that is still too many, and we know it. But I want you to take account of the significant reduction nevertheless. As we consider future reductions, our focus must be on achievable and verifiable measures that all interested parties, nuclear states and non-nuclear states alike, can trust. Our past experience, both successes and disappointments, will inform how and when we proceed, with each step building on the last. I know that metaphors abound in regard to this process. At the United Nations General Assembly First Committee this past October, I posited that perhaps the oft-used stairway or ladder metaphor doesn't quite fit, since it implies a kind of single pathway towards success, a kind of single stairway to heaven, to quote, a famous rock song that I liked quite a bit when I was in university. Anyway, the more I thought about it, the more I'm convinced that we can only find success through multiple concurrent paths, both large and small. Those paths can interconnect, just like creeks and streams connect to form rivers. Over time, rivers cut through seemingly impenetrable stone on the way to their final destination. In those terms, one can see how a myriad of tasks in the disarmament arena connect to each other and slowly but surely form an irreversible path toward nuclear disarmament. Here in Prague, it's appropriate to consider how far we've come down this metaphorical river and how much we have achieved in terms of reducing nuclear arsenals. Standing here in 1985, when the Cold War still divided this continent between democracy and dictatorship, it would have been impossible to imagine, much less predict, what was to come. Within a decade from 1985, Washington and Moscow would conclude the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, the Presidential Nuclear Initiatives, and the HEU Purchase Agreement. These various bilateral and parallel unilateral initiatives led to an array of impressive and long-reaching effects, banning an entire class of missiles carrying nuclear weapons, reducing the deployed nuclear stockpiles of the United States and Russian Federation by over 11,000 warheads, drastically reducing and eliminating whole categories of tactical nuclear weapons while removing others from routine operational deployment, and converting Russian nuclear material equivalent to an astounding 20,000 nuclear weapons into fuel for nuclear power. Today, light bulbs all across the United States, approximately 1 in 10 light bulbs in recent years, are being lit by electricity produced from nuclear materials that could otherwise have fueled those 20,000 nuclear weapons, and this was pursuant to the so-called HEU Purchase Agreement. Those efforts were followed by the Strategic Offensive Reductions Treaty, or SORT, sometimes called the Moscow Treaty, that further reduced US and Russian deployed strategic forces. Most recently, of course, President Obama and then Russian President Medvedev were here in Prague in 2010 to sign the New START Treaty. When it is fully implemented, New START will limit deployed strategic nuclear warheads to their lowest levels since the late 1950s. New START, I'm glad to tell you, is being well implemented by both the Russian Federation and the United States, and is enhancing security and strategic stability between our two countries. Current tensions with the Russian Federation highlight the durability of the verification regime and the important confidence that is provided by data exchanges and on-site inspections under the treaty, as well as the security and predictability provided by verifiable mutual limits on strategic weapons. None of these developments could have been predicted back in 1985, nor laid out in a long-term, time-bound program. On the contrary, it was the faithful implementation of each of these initiatives that provided the trust and confidence and the strategic opportunity to move ahead to the next. It would have been wrong then to accept gimmicks and distractions in the place of hard work and real progress toward disarmament. It would be wrong to do so today. Underpinning all of our efforts, stretching back decades, has been our clear understanding and recognition of the humanitarian consequences of the use of these weapons. That is the message that the United States will take to the Conference on Humanitarian Impact of Nuclear Weapons in Vienna next week. We are participating not because our nuclear policy has changed. It has not. We are participating to reinforce the message, as I have put forth here, that the practical path we are following so successfully and have been in the past remains the only realistic route to our shared goal of a nuclear weapons-free world. We cannot and will not support efforts to move to an amorphous nuclear weapons convention or the false hope of a fixed timeline for the elimination of all nuclear weapons. We must acknowledge that not every nation is ready or willing to pursue serious arms control and nonproliferation efforts. As we push those nations to accept their global and ethical responsibilities, the United States will maintain a safe, secure, and effective arsenal for the defense of our own nation, but also for the defense, importantly, of our allies. This is not a stance, as some have argued, that is mutually exclusive of U.S. disarmament goals. It is simply recognizing the international security environment in which we find ourselves and our responsibilities to our own defense and the defense of our allies. We must take account of these responsibilities as we pursue further disarmament progress. We are conscious of our current obligations and responsibilities, and we are meeting them. As President Obama said here in Prague, the United States also has a responsibility to lead efforts toward disarmament. And I can confirm to you that we will never relent in the pursuit of our disarmament goals. That said, we are under no illusion about the obstacles confronting us that slow the pace of progress on arms control and nonproliferation efforts. We are seeing new and enduring pressures on the nonproliferation regime, pressures that threaten global stability. We are seeing nations turn away from cooperation, turn away from the common good of nonproliferation efforts, and cling ever more tightly to their nuclear arsenals. Some see the landscape and say that we cannot control the spread of nuclear weapons and other weapons of mass destruction, or further reduce nuclear stockpiles. They are wrong. It was here in Prague that President Obama reminded us that such fatalism is a deadly adversary, for if we believe that the spread of nuclear weapons is inevitable, then in some way we are admitting to ourselves that the use of nuclear weapons is inevitable. Again, the United States cannot and will not accept this. When we fail to pursue peace, the President also said, then it stays forever beyond our grasp. To denounce or shrug off a call for cooperation is an easy, but also a cowardly thing to do. The United States will press ahead, even in the face of obstacles. While we have accomplished much over the past 5 years, our efforts are not static. We have no intention of diverting from our active efforts to reduce the role and numbers of nuclear weapons, increase confidence and transparency, strengthen nonproliferation, and address compliance challenges. We will do so pursuing all available and practical avenues. The United States has made clear that we are prepared to engage Russia on the full range of issues affecting strategic stability, and that there are real and meaningful steps we should be taking that can contribute to a more predictable, safer security environment. Given that the United States and Russia continue to possess over 90% of the world's nuclear weapons, this is the next logical move. In June 2013, in Berlin, President Obama stated U.S. willingness to negotiate a reduction of up to 1/3 of our deployed strategic warheads from the level established in the New START Treaty, and this offer remains on the table. Progress, however, requires a willing partner and a conducive strategic environment. It requires that states take greater responsibility to resolve the conflicts that give rise to proliferation dangers. It requires ending the nuclear buildup in Asia, that Iran join in agreeing to restore full confidence in the peaceful nature of its nuclear program, and that North Korea return to compliance with its international obligations. And it requires that we make progress where we can. This includes in the Middle East, where we will spare no effort to convene an historic conference on a zone free of all weapons of mass destruction and systems for their delivery. Further, as the United States considers arms control and nonproliferation priorities, we will continue to consult closely with our allies and partners every step of the way. Our security and defense, and theirs, is non-negotiable. No one here should doubt that we are in a difficult crisis period with the Russian Federation over Ukraine and Russia's violation of the INF Treaty. Addressing both situations is an ongoing process. With specific regard to the Russian INF violation, we will continue engaging the Russian government to resolve U.S. concerns. Our objective is for Russia to return to verifiable compliance with the INF Treaty, as the treaty is in our mutual security interests and that of all countries around the globe. Indeed, we need cooperation with Russia and others to address new threats. First and foremost, the threat of terrorists acquiring a nuclear weapon or nuclear material. They need this cooperation for their own security as well. Despite hopes to the contrary, there is no way to skip ahead and forego the hard work of solving the truly daunting technical and political non-proliferation and disarmament challenges that lie ahead. It is not enough to have the political will to pursue this agenda. We have to have a practical way also to pursue this agenda. We can all acknowledge that verification will become increasingly complex at lower numbers of nuclear weapons, while requirements for accurately determining compliance will dramatically increase. And I already see this moment approaching as we are getting to lower and lower numbers of deployed nuclear weapons. Everyone who shares the goal of a world free of nuclear weapons should be devoting time and energy now to address this verification challenge. With that idea in mind, I am announcing today a new initiative, the International Partnership for Nuclear Disarmament Verification. The United States proposes to work with both nuclear weapon states and non-nuclear weapon states to better understand the technical problems of verifying nuclear disarmament and to develop solutions. And I want to stress here, it's not only studying the problem, or as our recently retired and much esteemed Deputy Secretary of State Bill Burns used to say, don't just admire the problem, work on solutions. And that's precisely what this initiative is all about, working on solutions. The United Kingdom and Norway have already pioneered this type of work. This new initiative will build on the spirit of that UK-Norway project to create a non-traditional partnership that draws on the expertise of talented individuals around the world in both the public and private sectors. The Nuclear Threat Initiative will be a prime partner, providing intellectual energy and resources to this project from outside of government, and we're very excited to be working with them. Beyond this effort, we will continue to work with the P5 on transparency and verification. The United States is pleased that the United Kingdom will be hosting the 6th annual P5 conference early next year. The regular interaction, cooperation, and trust building that is happening now is the foundation on which future P5 multilateral negotiations on nuclear disarmament will stand. Working with global partners, the United States has put a premium on efforts to reduce the threat of nuclear terror. Since President Obama spoke here in Prague in 2009, over 3 metric tons of vulnerable, highly enriched uranium and plutonium material have been removed or disposed of, and 11 countries have removed all HEU from their territory. The Nuclear Security Summit process, under which this activity has taken place, has increased the security of nuclear material worldwide, reducing the chances that such material can fall into the hands of terrorists. We still need to strive for continuous improvement because nuclear security is never, never finished. As long as nuclear and radioactive materials exist, they require our utmost commitment to their protection. Along with our P5+1 partners, the United States will continue to work to seek concrete, verifiable steps to ensure that Iran's nuclear program is exclusively peaceful. We will support legally binding assurances against use or threat of use of nuclear weapons in the context of a nuclear weapons-free zone treaty treaty protocols, and push for the negotiation of a fissile material cutoff treaty, as well as the ratification and subsequent entry into force of the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. All are key to future success in disarmament. I recently participated just a few weeks ago in an Observer's Day for the 2014 Integrated Field Exercise hosted by Jordan and the Preparatory Commission for the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. This exercise, which is still ongoing now in the first weeks of December, was extraordinary to witness. Experts from 44 nations around the world are working together in an approximate 1,000 square kilometer area near the Dead Sea. These experts are employing the latest in nuclear explosion detection technologies like noble gas, seismic, multispectral imaging, and many others to test the techniques, equipment, and operational procedures needed to conduct an on-site inspection under the treaty's verification regime. This experiment is a testament to what we can achieve through cooperation and creativity, and I frankly think it's an important model for the future of what we need to be pursuing in the multilateral disarmament sphere overall. So I commend the IFE-14 to you. If you haven't had a chance to dock in and look at what's going on in Jordan, I really recommend it. It is an extraordinary testament to what can be done in the disarmament field when countries work closely together. As I have outlined, the United States has plans and we intend to see them through. At the core of our efforts is, again, our deep national understanding of the human impacts of nuclear weapons. That is why I attended the Marshall Islands Remembrance Ceremony commemorating the 60th anniversary of the Castle Bravo test last March. That is why I went to Hiroshima in April to see the cenotaph and the Peace Museum and speak with an atomic survivor. That is why I visited Utah twice in the past year to speak with families affected by the downwind effects of nuclear explosive testing in the United States. Nuclear weapons are not a theoretical tool. They are real, and their use would extract a terrible toll. None of us should ever forget that. With that, I'll draw my remarks to a close, and I look very much forward to our discussion. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Madam Undersecretary, for the very concise description of the current situation, as well as the very open allusions to the greatest challenges that still lie ahead of us, as well as mentioning the new initiative, the International Partnership for Nuclear Disarmament Verification, which hopefully will contribute to global disarmament. We still have some time before we commence the first panel for a very brief round of questions. We can pick 2 to 3 questions from the audience. So anyone who would like to ask any question can do so now.
Bernd has put up
yes, yeah. Bernd, please.
Thank you so much indeed. Madam Secretary, we had yesterday a discussion on the INF Treaty, and the question came up to what extent your administration is sure about the violation, what you call the violations of the INF Treaty by the Russians. And we also discussed the question that there are counter accusations by the Russians saying that the Aegis ashore the launch pad Mark 41 can be put at some point from a sea-based to a ground-based launch pad, and then would constitute a violation. Could you clarify these kind of things, because the controversy was going on and there was no clear understanding on how you substantiate your allegation in that respect? Thank you.
Yes, with regard to our determination, which was made last July in our so-called annual compliance report, by law, the United States is required, and it's my Bureau of Arms Control, Verification and Compliance that is responsible for putting together the compliance report on an annual basis. We determined that Russia is in violation of the INF Treaty with a ground-launched cruise missile that has been tested to intermediate range. As those of you who know the INF Treaty know, it is a total ban on nuclear weapons. So it's not just possession, but it's also development and testing that is banned. That is why we have focused in on this missile, which has been tested. We are extraordinarily certain because we do these compliance assessments in a very careful and extensive interagency way, pursuing all the tools that are available to us, including intelligence sources and methods. What is reflected in the non-classified, the unclassified version of the report, which was made public last July, is backed up by extensive analysis and by classified versions of the report as well. I know it's never satisfying when somebody says, well, there are classified sources out there, but I can tell you, I first of all attest to a very careful process of determining this violation. that extended for several years of research and analysis related to intelligence sources and methods. So I am as certain as I have ever been about any compliance matter. But in all cases, when we put something into the compliance report, it is because we have very, very carefully examined the evidence. We have very, very carefully looked at it. And it's not just the Department of State, but it is a matter that is pursued by an entire interagency team, including the intelligence community, the Department of Defense, the Energy Department, which has special responsibility for certain matters related to nuclear weapons, nuclear warheads. So it is a full-up process, and the determinations are not made lightly. So what you see in the unclassified report is backed up, I believe, in a very solid way. In terms of our own issues that the Russians have brought up, of course, in each case they have brought up, and you mentioned Aegis Ashore, we always do our own compliance assessment of each of our systems when they are getting ready for deployment. And so we have a very careful legal and technical argument as to why each of our systems is in compliance with the INF Treaty. And we have assured the Russians of this fact, and furthermore, we have told them that we would be willing to present to them the details of our own compliance assessment, why we believe, why we are convinced that each of the systems they have made allegations about is in compliance with the INF Treaty, and we're prepared to do so. And so that gets down to the diplomacy of this effort, which we are very committed to. We want to continue to have a very good, solid, and serious discussion with the Russians. I will stress that both countries, the United States and Russian Federation, up to this point, continue to underscore the importance of the International Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty to the national security of each of our countries. So there is reason to pursue a serious diplomatic process now, and we need to get down to it. So, but in terms of the quality of the analysis that went into making the determination, it is of the highest quality, and the United States government stands fully behind it as a matter of full consensus among all the agencies involved in the United States, both technical and policy agencies.
Thank you. Thank you. There was another question there, and with that we will have to finish because we are running out of time. Please.
Thank you very much, Rose, particularly for your announcement of this international partnership for nuclear disarmament for verification.
Could you turn on the mic, please?
I think this would be something that would be welcomed at the NPT review conference coming up next year. And I was wondering if you might be able to tell us a little bit more, and whether the labs would be involved, to what extent would these be technological solutions as well as conceptual solutions?
We are very keen to see this initiative dig down deep on technical solutions to the difficult problems that are before us, and specifically warhead monitoring and verification, as I already alluded to in my remarks. There's been some good work that's been done over the years. I recognize the UK-Norway project. There's been good work done in the non-governmental community, recognizing the work that NTI has been doing in recent times, but the Monterey Institute is also involved in exploring this arena. You know, under the aegis of the so-called Warhead Safety and Security Exchange Agreement that was signed back in the 1990s between the United States and Russian Federation, there was some very detailed work done on certain important warhead monitoring and verification technologies. But I think we need to fast forward now to the 21st century. Many of you know of my interest in the information revolution and what kinds of tools may emerge from the information revolution, from ubiquitous sensing, that could help us to tackle this problem. So, Tariq, in terms of the agenda, I think the spectrum, the scope is wide open. But we truly are looking for technical solutions as well as policy fixes. The two go together.
So let me thank you again to Madam Undersecretary. Please join me again in thanking her. And we will move directly to the first panel, and I'll pass the floor to Nick Hinek, who will chair the first panel.